It's Chris from Legion of Games again. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching the previous videos. I want to just say thank you again. If you like what you see, hit the up arrow. Tell other people about it. Subscribe it. I'm looking just to get started. So anything you can do to pass the word on is appreciated. And again, welcome the comments, the criticisms, anything. I mean, this is all a work in progress. So I want to tailor it to what people want to see at this point. This video is actually going to be talking about how you're probably going to be spending your money on Kickstarter next week and what pledges you're going to be looking at in terms of the things that are going to dominate the market. So without further ado, we got 4 big ones this week that are going to be sort of monopolizing your time, money, effort in terms of figuring things out. So let's begin. First up this week, we're going to start with one of the smaller ones. Although, you know, it did raise over $100,000 in the last campaign. I don't remember the exact amount, but it was sort of a little bit of a shot in the dark, a little one that really people didn't see coming, but we're relatively pleased with. If this is your type of game, if this is your preferred genre as well as player count. The sequel, it's also a standalone expansion to the original game Set a Watch. So you are the adventurers, you know, sort of in your own D&D party. You are resting for the night, and you're setting one character as the watchman, so that in case anything goes bump in the middle of the night, you are there to sort of defend the rest of the camp, rouse the rest of the camp, kind of deal with whatever may come in the middle of the night. So interestingly enough, they say you can combine it with the previous one or just play it by itself, so it's sort of got a little bit of an Aeon's End sort of theme in that sense. Hopefully they avoid what one of the biggest criticisms for Aeon's End that I have seen and I personally dislike is getting duplicate of everything. You know, Aeon's End, I don't know how many counters I have for Graveholm as well as the big bad. Just way too many. But I know that kind of goes along with this, not wanting to make people have to have the base game people to play something like this. So it's a double-edged sword. If you're not a backer, you can get in right now, but if you are a previous backer or a previous owner of this game, you're going to get some duplication probably. They're marketing it as it's going to have a bunch of more characters, locations, things like that. I think the big hit for this crowd, though, was that this is going to be mainly a solo game, was how this is really described to me and how this really looked to me. This is a solo game with maybe 1 to 2 players, but primarily I look at it as, you know, that sort of game. So if you're in that solo group, this is probably going to be a big hit for you in terms of something that's going to catch your interest. Now, whether or not it's actually for you, mechanics, you know, there's dice rolling. A lot of people don't like that. There's role playing. There's a little bit of that sort of thing. So if that's your vein, great. If it's not, the generic fantasy spin of things may not totally whet your appetite. So that is one that you definitely need to be watch on. This one is going to be on September 22. All 4 of the games I'm going to be talking about today are going to be launching on September 22. So it really won't be a hit to your wallet until probably paycheck come in October, credit card, if you will. But these are the ones that are probably going to occupy your time next week. I'm kind of skipping over, disclaimer, I'm kind of skipping over this coming week. It's a relatively lackluster week in terms of Kickstarters, so I'm kind of jumping ahead a week so that you can start planning accordingly how you're going to spend your time, effort, and money at that point. Number 2. If you watched one of my previous videos, I talked about the 7th Citadel already at length. This is, I mean, it's got 8,000 plus backers already following the Kickstarter page. It's launching on September 22. I'm really surprised that other campaigns just kind of aren't staying away, and maybe they are for that reason. But it'll be interesting to see the original Choose Your Own Adventure sort of not tile but card laying game where you're exploring a fantasy take on things. I just love seeing this. The playtime, 5 to 1,000. Basically, you play it for as long as you want. Now, the one criticism I said in my other video, and I'll repeat here, is it going to be able to break the monotony of if you failed a curse last time, what happens the next time you play through? Are you going to be going through the motions? So if you got 70% way through a curse and then you failed, are you going to have to do that same 70% again? Just so you can get to that other 30%? Or is it going to have some other save mechanic that's going to be new, or some other mechanism that's going to allow you to not have to retread the same thing over and over again? In some games that's really fun. In Dark Souls, in games like that where grinding is part of it, great. You grind until you get good enough. In a game like this, grinding is not such a positive thing from my standpoint. So I think you need to be aware of whether or not that has been addressed, if that was one of your concerns or one of your issues with the last one, and then what's going to happen with it. How much different is it going to be? For me, I want to see a playtest with this. I want to see some actual gameplay because I want to know what's different. I just don't want them to list mechanics and list mechanisms and list abilities and there's a talent tree of this and there's that. I want to see it firsthand. I want to see it before I back it because, again, you're going to be talking much higher price point than this one with Setawatch. Setawatch, my guess is you're going to be running somewhere to $30 to $40. They'll probably do a basic and a deluxe. No big deal. Most people are going to go for the deluxe because it's going to be the Kickstarter exclusive version without being exclusive. 7th Citadel is going to have, on my guess, is probably a couple expansions, a couple little add-ons like they did with the terrain or with the little miniatures, and so it's going to have some fluff like that, but I think it's also going to have a couple expansions that just go with it. And what do those expansions do? How does the mythos in this game change from the last one? Are they right for going with a dark medieval fantasy world? I mean, could they have gone for something more unique? It's very generic, and I think that's a turn-off to some people too. So we'll have to see. Granted, it's going to be, it's going to fund in the millions. The question is just how high is the bar going to be? Is it going to be one of the biggest ones of the year? Probably. How high is the question? Okay. Number 3. Also, again, like I said, launching on September 22. This is the, I don't know if you want to say spiritual successor to Dinosaur Island, Dinosaur World. It's got the same sort of graphical design. It's got the same sort of coloration. It's got a little bit more interaction, though, this time is what's thought in terms of uniqueness. I think there was some concern last time where you got all these dinosaurs, you've got all these little meeples that they included, but they're all the same. It's generic, and so that was some of the criticisms. But at its core, this is a worker placement game. Rumor is that this is going to be a little heavier than what it was previous, and so it'll be interesting to see if that attracts more people or if that detracts more people. Again, especially with the heavy worker placements, I feel like people are going to look at the art, they're going to look at the design, and it's going to be something that either they're aware of or they're just looking at it purely at aesthetics. And speaking of aesthetics, a lot of people were turned off by the original color scheme of the previous game. And so it'll be interesting to see how drastic the departure or how much they weighed that criticism in to see how it's changed their development since then. I love the artwork, but it's going to be a pass for me. I'm not speaking to the quality of the game or how good it's going to be, but I am not a big worker placement person. So worker placements for me I'm more tactical than strategic. So will I take a look at it? Absolutely. Will I watch the stretch goals? Will I watch it fund? Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be in the high 100,000s. I wouldn't be surprised if it breaks 7 figures, depending on how it's priced and what else comes with it, what the stretch goals or daily unlocks end up being. But for me, it's going to be a pass unless it is just something that is just so unique and so different. Because, that's the other thing that's going to get people in, known IPs are dragging people in nowadays. It's the pedigree of the designer, it's the pedigree of the company, it's the pedigree of the previous game iteration, or it's something unique. And so for me, it doesn't strike any of those 4 things for me. So for me, this is probably going to be a pretty strong pass. But if you like worker placements, if you like the theme, it seems like dinosaurs are becoming the thing. And what you really will need to probably do is, how does this compare to Dinosaur Island? How does this compare to the Dinosaur Island? How does this compare to Dinogenics with the expansion that just came out? How does this compare just to the easy to get to the table tiny epic dinosaurs? If you would have predicted that dinosaurs were the 2020 trend of things, I would have been a little surprised, to be frank with you. But this is the sort of thing that is going to be sort of telling. So it'll be interesting to watch from that side of things. Number 4. This one I think is going to fly a little bit under the radar, but I think the IP is well enough known, and the previous iteration of this game, The Thing, Infection Outpost 13, has gotten relatively good enough reviews and it's out of print. I believe, or it's very hard to hit. You can see just based on that Amazon price is, never a great disclaimer, but it's a thematic game. This is a thematic game based on the movie, another IP based on it. So you've got really what you've got in this situation is a game where you hope things go right, and I mean that. I mean that both in the positive as well as the negative, because it's a semi-co-op. And if you know anything about the semi-co-ops that are out there, it's very polarizing. Dead of Winter is probably one of the more well-known ones, especially in the mainstream. You have your BSGs, you have your Dark Moons, you've got things like that that are sort of in that realm. That is an element of Traitor, there's an element of that. But rare is the game that does it well, and where you've got one person actively camouflaged, blending in, trying to sabotage the rest of the people at the same time. Either it becomes way too obvious or they become way too powerful. And so whether or not they're going to be able to mimic this IP in a board game form would be very interesting to see, especially considering it's not really a remake, it's just a different company coming out with it. So I'm not really sure what to expect with this. I think it's going to attract a lot of people because of the intellectual property. I think it could be something that flies under the radar, sort of like the Warehouse 13 game that came out last year. Finally, I think it delivered, or beginning of this year, I forget. That is very well done. It's excellent. It stays close to the source material, but it wasn't a huge smashing success just because of lack of initial knowledge about the IP itself. It wasn't something that had such a broad appeal that it attracted in everyone and anyone, especially within the culture of either horror movies or board games or video games, some big niche. It was more localized. If you watched sci-fi, if you liked the goofiness of Warehouse 13, it was what got you in. If you're a big horror person, this is probably going to grasp you, especially if you overlap with video or board games. But in the movie realm of things, horror is definitely one of the smaller niches. And so I'm not sure how much it's going to be able to capture. I think it'll be interesting to see the price point, because I think the last price point for some of these IPs was quite high. And so that was quite limiting. They offered deluxe miniatures and things like that that really raised the price point as well. So this is probably, of the three, the biggest wild card in terms of the price point. You know kind of where you're going to get with Set a Watch. You know kind of what you're going to be in the ballpark with 7th Citadel based on 7th Continent. Same thing with Dinosaur World and Dinosaur Island. I have to expect that this is probably, if I had to bet, probably the second most expensive game of the four of these. Just base game sort of deluxeification alone. I think it's actually going to be more than Dinosaur World, depending on what else Dinosaur World throws in, obviously, and what else there's throws in. But I think it has the potential to be that much more expensive, which may detract, again, people like me. Semi-co-op has to be done absolutely right. This is a game where I'm not sure, but I think this is not something you can probably simulate on Tabletop Simulator. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of gameplay they have, if they have already sent out prototypes so you can see groups playing it, so you can see the dice tower, you can see somebody like that actively playing it. I mean, this isn't something you're going to be sending to Rado. This isn't something you're going to be sending to, One Stop Co-op Shop, those guys that do a great job, but it's not probably going to fit in with sort of that play style. And so it'll be interesting to see what they have from that side of things. I'm sure there's going to be a few other situations or games that pop up. This has been a really low month for me as well. I'm backing 2 games right now: Ivion, the expansion, standalone character, deck builder, battler, and Philadelphia, the Japanese art one. But for me, I'm not sure if those are actually going to be ones that I follow through with at the end of the pledging. And so right now, for me personally, this might be a relatively low month. I'm averaging about 3 games a month right now from that Kickstarter, but this might be a relatively low month for me because none of these 4 big ones towards the end of September really do much for my own personal game style, my group's game style. So it'll be interesting to see what else pops up, and hopefully there's a surprise or two, but also hopefully for my wallet, there won't be. So it'll be interesting to see just from that standpoint. That's it. Just a quick and nice explanation of what Kickstarter's doing this week. That's it. So just a quick couple overviews of Kickstarter. It'll be interesting to see what happens with these, and I'll be tracking them no matter what, even if I'm not backing them. So tell me your thoughts on these. Tell me anything else you're excited for between now and the end of the month. I'd love to cover it. I don't really have anything big myself personally, but I'd love to see what other people are excited about so I can at least comment on it and weigh in on it. Okay, great, thanks. Like and subscribe. See you next time. You know what? Since you watched this video, I'm going to sneak in a fifth one, just for you guys who are watching this. One I'm very split on. Machina Arcana. This is a horror, gothic dungeon crawler that is very unique and very different than a lot of the dungeon crawlers out there. It is very difficult. It is meant to be a little grindy. It is meant to be very imaginative. It is just a little bit different. It's been made by just one guy and a team of 4, I think, through their games. Jurek, I believe, is his name. He does the art is fantastic. It's second expansion, or second big box expansion, because he's had 2 Kickstarters already at this point. The first one put Machina Arcana sort of on the map. The second one was sort of a remastered edition, and then it had 2 mini expansions included in it if you went more deluxe. This one is supposed to be a larger expansion. There's not much information even known about it at this point. There's nothing on Boardgame Geek, but it's launching on the 22nd as well. I own a copy of Machina Arcana 2nd edition, and so I actually had a copy of 1st edition too. But honestly, it was one of the worst rule books I had ever read. I had no clue what I was doing after the first rule book, and I ended up trading it away. And so I did not miss it. I did not. And so, but they got me on the second one because I love the theme. I love dungeon crawls. But disclaimer: I haven't had a chance to play it. I've watched playthroughs. I've read criticisms. I've read critiques of it. This rulebook is better, but it's not a ton better. And so that was still the biggest criticism, was why, if you're doing a redo, why is somebody not professionally proofreading this? And that is a critique of mine that I fail to understand why a lot of Kickstarters aren't having professionally, or even otherwise, just somebody else, a non-gamer gamer, reading these books and saying, what does this mean? How are you doing this? Why is it written this way? I have no clue what I'm doing. You can't have the people that know the game reading the book all the time. It doesn't work. And so this game is notoriously difficult. It's notoriously not easy to learn as well. And so it'll be interesting to see what is new about this. Is it just going to be more stuff? I mean, for a game that's I'm already having trouble getting to the table, this is the other one that I would be sort of tempted by. But again, exclusivity-wise, there really wasn't anything on the previous campaign. It was more of a price discount, so they just discounted the price that it was actually going to be at. I think it has limited retail availability, which is always a big concern with a game like this. If you don't get it on Kickstarter, you may just not get it. But for me, it's gonna. I may have to try and get it finally to the table. Now, the trick is, obviously, with the pandemic, am I going to be playing by myself? This is not going to be a game that my wife would play with me, so this may be a solo adventure to see if it's something I can get to the table, play, and figure out enough to decide whether or not it's a keep, it's a love it, I'm okay with it, but it's not going to replace other dungeon crawlers, but maybe I'll keep it around for a little while so I can play with my kids eventually, or is it going to be something I'm going to trade or sell? Because I think that's going to determine whether or not I back this. And so hopefully it'll be a long campaign, so I have some time to decide, but I can see that raising a couple $100,000 too. Like I said, the artwork is fantastic. I love the artwork. I love the style of things. But if that is the only reason I'm backing at this point, it's going to be a big no. It's going to be a big no because this is the 3rd time I want to see a rule book. I want to see some gameplay. I shouldn't, some of the other people backing it and supporting it have said, well, the creator is active on Boardgame Geek. He's put a couple self-made gameplay playthrough videos that were all well after the Kickstarter campaign. Why is that not on the Kickstarter campaign? Why is that not present from the beginning? Why are these questions needing to be answered so many on the forums? Please, 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 anyone who watches this, anyone who produces a game, anyone who has any interest in games, this is a basic necessity. And retail, this is the one area where retail really seems to dominate over Kickstarter, is rule books. Please invest in somebody to proofread. Please. Okay, that's the secret fifth one. Again, thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, tell your friends about it. Tell me things. I'd love to hear it. Tell me about your cats, your dogs, whatever it is. Tell me why penguins are your favorite animal. I don't really care. Tell me something. Shoot me a message. Anything. Great. See you guys next time.